Hello everybody, it's Angela coming back from Communing with the Cards. I wanted to pop in and do a little video, and I've been meaning to do this one for a while, but I've been struggling with a nasty bout with COVID, so I know I'm sure I still sound pretty awful, even though I feel better. But if I wait till I sound better, I don't know how long that may take. So I figured I'd go ahead and pop on. I've got some interesting things going on with my tarot practice that I kind of wanted to talk through, and if anybody has any ideas, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I was thinking maybe if I just think out loud, something will make a little bit more sense to me. So I think I mentioned in the last video, if anybody saw it, I'm going to sit here and fidget with my pendulum a little bit. The last video that I did, which was the first one, was introducing my deck Village. So as I've been going through that, most of the decks I think I might pull out on the table today are ones that I showed in that, maybe a few other ones. But one thing that I've noticed, I mentioned that I do a lot of deity work. That's actually a very important part of my practice. It's probably the most powerful part, but it's also the part that I feel like I have very little control over. I didn't set out to do deity work. When I get messages that come through the tarot that fall into that category, I'm not always seeking them out, but it seems like they are coming through more and more. It's amping up a lot in the last few months. My deity work practice started I think it started about a year ago. I was actually going through my 2023 journal toward the end of December just to kind of see if I saw any weird patterns or anything like that. And I did see the deity works and the messages from deity start popping up around late spring, early summer of 2023. And it was kind of hit or miss. Back then it would pop up here and there. And then it would go for a while and I would do a normal tarot practice. And then it would start popping up again and it was almost like a continuation of the previous message, right? Which is really strange. But it seems like since probably the late fall, it's really taking over my practice to the point where I noticed that this was, I want to say becoming a problem, but it's really not a problem. The work is interesting and I enjoy it. I'm getting a lot out of it. I don't want it to end, but I noticed that it was becoming a little bit overpowering when I was working on the monthly medicine from Dawn Michelle's YouTube subscription. I think it was in September or October. Like I would sit down to do the spreads for that practice and it would just turn into full-on deity work. And it got pretty blunt and pretty intense and quite literal. And that's been happening again. I tried to start on the fellowship, her fellowship practice in January. And yeah, I'm sitting there trying to, put down cards for the spreads for that practice and, for the weekly practices there. And it just was not following the spreads at all. And it was just like, look, you're going to sit down and you're going to listen and we're going to talk about A, B, and C and, deal with it. Come to the table, be ready. So, who am I to say no? So I've been doing that. And I think I may have mentioned in my first video that I do have one deck in particular, and I have it here. It is my Pagan Otherworlds Tarot. I've got some stuff in the box there that I like to keep tucked in there. So my Pagan Otherworlds, when I bought this deck, and I've been trying to remember if this one has always, let me adjust my camera a little bit there, has always been heavy on the deity work, or if it started afterwards, but I don't really remember how long I've had this deck or when I bought it. I said I was going to do better with reverse cards. Sorry, guys. But I really don't remember this deck really working towards anything except that specific practice. And this one really speaks to me in a language all its own. It doesn't, even though it is a traditional tarot deck, right? It has the 4 suits and it has the major and the minor arcana and the quartz and everything. And it's you know, it doesn't stray too far from traditional tarot systems. It does lean a little bit Marseille-ish to me in some of the minors, but that's, you know, that's not abnormal, right? But this deck to me does not even read like tarot. Like, I'm trying to see if I can, I don't know that I have the cards in any specific order, but let's just say, you know, if I pull the Knight of Wands, or the Knight of Cups from this deck, I don't get any kind of traditional tarot Knight of Cups meaning. I think Vyasa, the Sage Vyasa, who comes through. He's not, you know, a deity that I work with, but he gets involved. That's not normal, right? Like, does anyone else pull the Knight of Cups? Oh, here he is. Does anyone else pull the Knight of Cups from a tarot deck and think, oh my gosh, it's the Sage Vyasa? Probably not, but I can't unsee it now, right? And there are several cards in the wand suit also that are very similar, and it's weird because I don't know that I can use this deck for anything other than that practice at this point, which is fine because I like that. You know, I love the practice, and this is a powerful deck for it because it works that way, but it's just, it's really strange, right? I can't unsee the things that I've seen with this deck and the non-traditional messages that come up from it. So, yeah, that's been a whole thing. So this is a deck that is, you know, pretty much at this point only being used for deity work, which makes which at face value makes no sense to me because this is a relatively traditional deck. And, I mean, it's called the Pagan Otherworlds, right? I did actually find its box. It's called the Pagan Otherworlds, right? Well, my deity work is not pagan by any stretch of the imagination, so I don't know. I don't understand why this deck is the one that does it. And that got me, this is going to be a very, very, very rambly video, I apologize. But I don't know, is it just that the cards happen to reflect that energy? Or, I guess, does the intention for this deck to work for that practice, where is that coming from? That's what makes me really curious. And I don't know the answer. I'm thinking maybe I'll stumble upon something as I ramble and think out loud here, but I don't know the answer. So that's one that's pretty much only good for deity work at this point, which is fine. Terra Volatile, however you want to pronounce that, however it's supposed to be pronounced. That's another one. This deck has intimidated me since I bought it, to be honest with you. It has its own box, so it's not in the box, but I did find it. So it took me a while to really even start working with this deck, but once I did, it was another one. It only wanted to work with the deity that I work with. And there's only one. I don't change up from time to time. I'm not going to go really into the details of my deity work because that's really personal, but, oops, sorry about that. These are a little bit slippery, and I'm bouncing my camera around everywhere. Sorry. This is another one, since I've finally gotten up the nerve and gotten over my intimidation and started working with this deck. It's another one that just, it's determined to be part of that practice. And I'll tell you that one thing that I have noticed with this deck that's interesting, if you guys are familiar with this deck, which there are tons of walkthroughs on YouTube for, right? You'll know it has an extra suit. It has, you know, it's got the swords, the cups, the wands, and the pentacles, but it's also got the suit of vessels, which is associated with the, according to the guidebook, with the element of ether, which is interesting. So, when I do the work with when I use this deck and it comes up with messages around that practice, it tends to constantly throw me the suit of vessels for the most part. Which I think is interesting. I mean, this is a big deck, and I shuffle it pretty thoroughly before I start using it, and yet, you know, that seems to be what always comes up. So, you know, this is another deck now that pretty much I can guarantee if I pull it out and start to use it, excuse me, I'm so sorry, that's what it's going to talk to me about. It's going to be talking about, you know, the deity practice, and not really work with me much on anything else. So, this is another one. This is an Oracle deck. It's by the same maker as Pagan Otherworlds, which is why I bought it, because I love that deck so much that I got the Oracle that goes with it, or one of the Oracles that they make. This one's called the Supra. I anticipated that this one would also work with the Pagan Otherworlds for the deity work, and it does. It does. I've not been able to get any other kinds of messages out of this deck since I got it. I've only had it for about a month, but it slid straight in and just worked perfectly. I'm okay with that because that's kind of what I expected out of it, which is great. So it's really nice. Let's see. And I'm pretty sure I showed this one on my last video as well. I think all of these I did. Let's see. So this one might seem a little premature for me to speak about, but I did just get this deck in last week, I think. It's the Ophidia Rosa. I showed the other deck by this maker in my my community of cards of decks video. Their newer one called Viola Lux Umbra. The boxes look really similar, and honestly, so do the cards, but they have totally different personalities, I can tell you. And so far, this one, the Ophidia Rosa, it's pretty much decided that it's going to be part of that practice too, which is fine. The other deck by this maker that's similar, the Luxumbra, that one kind of goes back and forth. I've had it give me messages around deity, but I've also had it, I've used it in my ancestral work a little bit, and it was good for that. It seems to be a little bit more open to different things. But this one, this older deck from the same maker, the Ophidia Rosa, this one is also just falling right in line with the Pagan Otherworlds and the Supra. And I've actually been pulling them together, tarot on tarot, and it's working. It's pretty fierce and powerful, I have to say. So that's probably enough on the decks that are kind of setting themselves out to only work for this practice, right? But ramble. Back to the reason why I really wanted to make this video and to talk through this. I'm almost worried after the last few months and the fact that this is really the only topic that keeps coming up. If I'm going to lose the rest of my practice, right? And I don't want to give up the deity work because it's powerful, it's fierce, and I love it so much. And there's a lot of work yet to be done, trust me. And it's getting pretty intense. So I don't want to give that up, but I'm a little bit worried that I might lose the rest of my tarot practice because it seems like every time I sit down now and pull out cards, that's where it goes. And I'm totally, I understand maybe that's what I need right now. And maybe there's a reason for it. But at the same time, the way that the decks that I just went through that have pretty much designated themselves as deity work decks, the way that those read to me is not like reading tarot, even though they are tarot decks, except for the Supra Oracle. That was an Oracle deck. But, so I'm a little bit worried that every time I see the Knight of Cups in any deck, I'm going to think Vyasa and totally lose the traditional tarot, the more traditional tarot meanings, right? That could give you a totally different message that might have nothing to do with deity practice. So this concerns me a little bit. So one deck that I have been able to use, and it's kind of fleeting. I mean, sometimes it gives me more of a well-rounded reading, and sometimes it doesn't, is my Dark Days. I showed this last time. This one tends to be really good all-around reader for me that isn't refusing to work outside of a given practice. Yeah, this one has been really good and really versatile. It's kind of been there for me, which is nice. Another thing that I've done, that I've been doing since I've noticed that this is happening, is when I have gotten in new decks, and I think I'm going to go back and do this with some of my older decks. I'm so sorry. With some of my older decks as well. When I do deck interviews, because I usually do, not always, but usually do a deck interview with a new deck. I have some standard, pretty typical questions that, you know, I'll ask of the deck. Like, you know, what kind of work are we meant to do together? How will you deliver your messages to me? Another one I like to ask is, I'm sorry for the way I sound, guys. Another one that I like to ask is, what is my guiding card going to be out of this deck? What's the power card from this deck going to be the one I should really pay attention to when it pops out? But I've added another question, actually, and I'm, lately, and it's, are you going to work with me in my deity practice? I'm just blunt, straight out. Ophidia Rosa said yes. Supra said yes. I also got the, when I got the Ophidia Rosa, I went ahead and ordered the Pythia Botanical Oracle by Leila Nilo, and that one said yes. So I'm like, okay, well, sorry, and I think I might be getting limited on who I can talk to outside of this practice. But one, I thought this one was funny. I actually just got the pocket size version a month or two ago of the Wild Unknown Tarot. And when I did an interview with it, I asked it that question, and it gave me a hard no. We're not talking about that. So I was like, okay, finally. I have one that doesn't insist on being, you know, in the deity work practice that I can talk to about anything else. That's awesome. Me and my upside down cards. I think everybody is familiar with this deck, right? It's kind of got a cult following. It's very well known. But yeah, the pocket size of this one gave me a hard no. It said I'm not being part of that practice. It was hilarious. So, but and yet oddly I haven't worked with it a lot, so I need to test this out and make sure that it was telling me the truth. The other one, I had another one give me mostly a no on that. It wasn't as hard of a no. I think with the Wild Unknown, I don't have my journal with me where I record those interviews, but I think it gave me the two of the Two of Swords. When I asked that question, it was just like, no, block, impasse. It's like, okay. Tarot of the Holy Spectrum is another one that's kind of given me I don't remember which card it popped out for that question, but it kind of gave me I mean, if you really want to talk about that, I guess we can, but it's not my specialty. I was like, okay. So here's another one. I love this High Priestess card so much. Look at that. Yeah, so this is another one that I think has agreed to be a little bit more well-rounded. This is very interesting. This one's not rare either. I think there are videos of this deck all over the place, so I won't spend a ton of time on it. But anyway, I'd be curious. I'd be interested to know if anybody else has had that happen with their tarot practice, where one part of the practice, one specific practice within using tarot, just takes over everything. Because I really do feel like that has happened. Every time I sit down to work with the cards, it seems like that's the only thing that wants to come up. And it's not that I'm seeking it. Sometimes I literally just pull out cards to, you know, get an energy of the day or something like that. And it always goes in the direction of that specific practice. And the way that those messages come through is so dramatically different than reading tarot in a more traditional way that I don't even know how to explain it. I really don't. Like, I mean, the cards that come up and the messages that enter my mind when I see them does not in any way really correspond with the more traditional, well-known meanings of the cards at all. So I don't even know what to say. I don't even know how to explain it. But anyway, I'd be interested to know if anybody else has had this same experience, either with deity work or with any other kind of specific work that you do as part of your practice with the tarot, and how did you handle that? Also, if anybody else has experienced that and doesn't thinks they're crazy or thinks they're the only one, you're not. The other thing that kind of concerns me is, I mean, as different as the way the messages come through for this practice as they are, I'm almost scared I'm gonna lose my backbone knowledge of the tarot. That might be a little bit dramatic, but I don't know. Any thoughts, anybody? I would love to know if this is something you've experienced. Drop me a comment. Otherwise, thank you for listening to me ramble as I sound like Arcana 13, and I will be back with something a little bit more coherent, hopefully not as much of a pause in between. I'm hoping I'll start sounding more like a human soon and get back to my normal self. But you guys have a good one. I appreciate you listening to me, and let me know if this is something you've experienced before. And until next time, bye-bye.